Happy finishing day, friends. Welcome. Today we're going to be doing an animal cracker finish from start to finish, and I'm going to show you how easy peasy it is to finish your cute little animal cracker stitching into a fabulous finished piece. Now, this is the Tiger Lily way to do it. It's kind of a migrated combo deal of all the things. So let's just review what my animal cracker finish is going to look like, and then we'll go over all the materials I have gathered on the table that you're going to need to do it. So as I mentioned, it's kind of my take, Tiger Lily take on what the animal cracker is going to be. So obviously it's going to be your shape. I brought my two finished ones over to show to you. So we've got Clementine and Clovis, and they are finished the exact same way, but just different sizes, right? And what I have is I have two Tilda fabrics, coordinating fabrics on the back. You can use any fabric you want, but then I always use two. Kind of, it creates a pocket that, yes, can be a functional pocket. You could put a pair of scissors down there or sweet little doodaddy bit bob thing, but ultimately I do it for the envelope ease of stitching, meaning the way I finish it, you don't have any exposed seams on the entire perimeter of the animal cracker, so there's no hand sewing needed. This method, everything is done underneath this sneaky envelope and you'll never see it. So that's why I use two fabrics. They coordinate and complement, and that's what I've got. So that's what we're going to be doing today, but we're going to be doing it with Lily the Frog. So now let's review the supplies that are on the table. Again, this is just what I use and what I have. You can make use. I'm a big proponent, a big fan of using your stash, using what you have. So you don't have to have the exact same equipment, but something comparable, right? First is your stitch. Now, the great thing about the animal crackers is each one is totally unique. You can stitch it on whatever you want, linen, Aida, even weave, small count, big count, whatever you want. As you can tell from the finish, you don't need a big finishing margin. So this is my animal cracker stitched with my Tiger Lily floss conversion. But I have it on Moonstone, kind of a funky little scrap piece that I have. I have my two coordinating Tilda fabrics. You can see I picked a green, funky, foresty one. I just thought that was super fun for the top fabric. And then I'm going to do pink on the bottom pocket. So you need two coordinating fabrics. It doesn't need to be this big. That's just what I grabbed from my stash, a little fat quarter, a scrap, whatever you've got. Then you're also going to need, these are my point turners. I have different ones. I have, this is like a pickup stick that one of my sweet friends gave me at StitchCon last year. It is a great point turner or a stuffing tool, as well as just a straight up Riley Blake point turner, or I have my paper crafting tool. So just to smooth out the edges once you turn your piece inside out. So you'll need some kind of point turning / stuffing tool. You will need scissors. Now I just brought over one pair. I might pull out different pairs as we go. Sometimes I use pinking shears, especially if it's a super rounded edge, and we'll talk about it when we get to it. But I just grabbed a pair of scissors just to reflect that you'll need a pair of scissors. And I've got 3 pieces of interfacing. Now I like to use for my crackers, I interface all pieces of fabric, the stitch, the back piece, and the envelope piece. And I like to use Pellon 911F. F is for fusible, that's what that stands for. And then the 911 is a nice featherweight, kind of tissue papery weight interfacing. It's just enough to like lock your stitches in, hold everything so it doesn't move. I also brought my light box over, and I like to use a light box. You've seen, if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen them. I've also used Nature's Light Box, aka the window. So you can, if you don't have a light box, no worries. You can do exactly what I'm doing, holding your pieces up to the window. So don't worry, it's super great. And then I have grabbed some wool roving. I like to use roving for my stuffing on the crackers. You could totally use polyfill. You could use lizard litter, little combo package of all 3 of those things, whatever your preferred stuffing is. But I like a wool roving. It just gives it a nice dense piece. So the first step we're going to do is I'm going to take this over to the ironing board. I probably won't bring it over there because it's pretty self-explanatory. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to iron these 3 pieces of interfacing on my 3 fabrics. So As you can see, they're all a little big, but what I did is I just did an oversized representation of your cracker. So plenty of room. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. That's my theory on everything. So I'm going to go ahead and iron this pieces. They're all about the same. Obviously the size is going to be dependent on the size of your cracker, whether you're doing a clementine or a little bobbin or whatever, but they're all approximately about the same size based on giving me a nice at least 2-inch margin all around the cracker. So you don't need that much for the pocket, but just for the ease of simplicity, I'm gonna go ahead and iron 1, 2, 3 pieces of Pellon interfacing on the stitch, on the back of the stitch, on the back of the top cover fabric, and the back of the envelope fabric, and I'll be right back. All right, friends, so I'm back from the ironing board. So you can see I have put interfacing on the back of Lily. I've put interfacing on the back of my pocket fabric. Let me just cut it down to size. I won't need this big of a piece, but I'm better to have it. And then let me cut off this piece. So you're just going to trim your pieces. So then you're going to have your 3 pieces of fabric and we're going to put them together. Okay, step 1. The step 1 we're going to do is the tracing. So I've gone ahead and turned my light box on. Now remember, as I said, you could totally pretend this is, just hold this up to your window and do what I'm going to do. But you can see I've got my interfacing on the back of Lily. Now, that thread. So you see right there, it's a rogue green thread. So I'm going to leave this in. Normally I would edit this out of the video, but you know what? This might help somebody else. So that's the great thing about this interfacing is you can peel it off and it will stick again. So I'm going to go ahead. Obviously I was a bad stitcher and I did not trim my threads. I always anchor them after I'm done, but I'm going to go and give that another good press. We'll see another one right there. Now here I'm being picky and I probably wouldn't have seen it, but since I'm fixing it, let's fix it. So again, a little rogue green thread, and you can see through the same thing with the pink. Okay, so note to self, I should have paid attention to my threads before I went to the ironing board. So learn from me, make sure your threads are nicely trimmed and that nothing's going to come over to your linen. And then we'll come back and try again. All right, friends, back for round 2. I've got the same piece of interfacing. That's the great thing about that. 9/11, it peels off and lets you iron it back on again. So I did my little thread management, ironed on my piece again. Now we're good to go. I'm going to use my light box or Nature's light box, aka a window. And what you're going to do is you're going to trace around your animal cracker the margin you want. Meaning, let me pull over one of my animal crackers. So you can see this is about a 1/4 inch. Give or take, it doesn't matter. It's not exact. Some areas are going to be wider. So you can see right here, this is wider, but it's approximately a 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch all the way around using, and what I'm doing, this line that I'm going to draw, that is going to be my stitch line. Stitch on the line. So let me grab clementine. You can see the same thing. You can see it's about a 1/4 inch. It's not perfect. It's not exact, but it's close to it, right? So what we're going to do is take the pencil, and that's the great thing. It's just a pencil. If you don't like your line, you can do it again. But I'm just going to give myself slowly, and again, it's handmade. So it's about a 1/4 inch from the stitching. So you can see I'm just drawing, sketching a line about a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the stitching. Now it's real easy. Some crackers are a little bit more complicated depending on their design. And so you can, I can round out this, see how I kind of rounded out this dress a little bit to kind of mimic this right angle versus going around. And then the same thing, just make it your own. And so then you're going to come down. Now I am Going to give myself a nice straight line on the bottom. And you can see I did not go up into there. That's not what I'm going to do. And this is where you get to decide. You can decide what you want to do. You can look at what Stacy Nash did and do that, use that as inspiration. It's totally up to you. But kind of, you know, you can see, kind of stick with what you did on this side. You kind of want to like do a mirror image. And again, you can redraw and sketch. Okay, yeah, that's what I want. Good, good. And go back up to the top. And you're just going to trace all down. And that is it, my friend. So you can see this is a little not as symmetrical as what I would like. So I'm probably going to revise this a little bit. There we go. I rounded that edge just a little bit more, so it was more like a mirror image to this side. So you can see, make sure you're happy with your sketch line. You know, take a look at it a little bit more if you want. But, you know, nature is not symmetric. So, you know, if it's a little bit unique on one side, that's just the way it works, right? That's just, it's more true to nature. So now we've got that stitched out, and that is great. So that's the only thing we needed the light box for. So we're going to go ahead and put that away. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, we need to prep. We've got 2 pieces of fabric, right? And both of them we're going to need to prep before we take them over to the sewing machine. So we're not ready for this one. So this is my full back, meaning this piece is going to be the full length of the piece. Now, what we're going to do, and you can't see, I can't show you. Oh, well, maybe. Hold on. Let's see. You might, way down in there, not really way, but at least a good inch, inch and a half below this pocket line is the hole. Now, if I was worried about it, I could close it up, but you can see little stuffing coming out right there. That's where the hole is. But you're good, right? These are just going to be, nobody's going to be handling and digging around and doing that things. So, but the full back cover is that full fabric, but we need to create the hole. And it's very similar to how I create my Rick Rack pillow finishing tool tutorial. So if you've used that tutorial, it's the exact same, like we're piercing the fabric to leave the slit. So what we're going to do is I'm going to look at approximately right here, and I'm going to be like, where do I want my pocket to line up? How high do I want my pocket? You can see some of them are higher than, I kind of do it 2/3 up. No rhyme or reason. It doesn't really matter. But if I want my pocket to be, let's say right in this kind of circly area, that might not be the best. Let's gonna bring my pocket down to right at this kind of like juncture right here where the curve happens. There's no rhyme or reason. You can have it be wherever you want. What I'm doing this for is I'm planning that I need to make sure that my slit is below the pocket. So if I'm gonna have my pocket right here, come up to this side on the back side, I need my slit to be about an inch, inch and a half below that line. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold right there. Okay, do you see where I'm, so if this is where my pocket line is coming up on the back, it's about 1.25 inches down, and I'm going to fold it. And what I'm going to do right now is go over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam right here and right here. This is going to be a 2 stitch. I'm going to stop with my needle here and take my stitch length up to 6. Stop with my needle here and then bring it back to 2. We're going to go over to my sewing machine. I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about. And then when we get down to it, you'll be able to understand why I'm doing this. This is also going to be my turn hole. So that's the reason I'm creating the turn hole / stuffing hole right here. Now, what you need to take into account is your turn hole can't be too big, but it also can't be too small, right? You got to be able to kind of invert the envelope pillow all around. So I could probably make my turn hole just a little based on this cracker. Every cracker is different. You know, this turn hole was probably only this wide. And it works, it can happen. So each one is going to just be dependent on the size of your cracker. You want to give yourself at least a good 3/4 of an inch on either side of the stitch to hold the severity of the stitch together. But then the rest can be your turn hole. The bigger the turn hole, the easier it is to turn, but you also can't make it too big, right? Okay, so we're gonna take that over and sew that, and I'll bring that to you. And then let me just tell you what we're gonna do with this while I take it over there, is I'm just going to double seam this, meaning I'm going to just fold, and I should have cut that pretty, but I totally can later. And it's just gonna give you a nice, so that way that's the inside of my pocket. It's not gonna be pretty, you can't see it, but I do want to just have a nice clean folded over edge, and then I'm going to do this stitch line right here. Can you see the little white stitches? So that's what we're going to do. Let's go over to the sewing machine and I'll show you what we're doing. All right, friends, so here we are over at the sewing machine. Like I said, we're going to do the full piece first. And I have my machine set for a number 2 stitch length, and that's where I'm starting off. And then when I get to this point right here where I identified that's where my turn hole is going to start, we're going to stop. I'm going to do some back stitches, kind of reinforce that seam, because you just don't want it to come undone when you when it goes under the tension of your turning. So then you can see I reinforce that seam back and forth a couple times just to know it's going to hold still. Now, and then I cut my thread. I'm going to go back in the same hole, take my stitch length up to 6. Now you could just skip this altogether, but usually I don't even pick up my needle. And so this is where I would stop and change my stitch length again. Now my machine, of course, won't let me change. I have to unlock it. My old machine would just let me dial it in. Sorry for the click, click, click in. And then I'm going to go back to the same stitch, and then I'm going to lock my foot in. And back stitch again a couple times there. And there's that piece. And then I'll show you what we're going to do with it. And then this one, remember this is just my pretty fold. Now this does not need to be a 2, it's just a decorative top stitch. I like to use a 3.5 stitch length for my decorative top stitch. And that's that. So you can see there's my pretty top stitches. And now we're going to take it back over to the ironing table, and I'll show what we're going to do. All right, friends, so now we're back over here, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do. We're going to take your scissors. Of course, I picked big fat scissors. I should go get a pair of tiny ones. But I'm cutting right along this seam, right? So that's my fold edge seam. But it's okay, I've stitched it all, right? So everything's still good. And now what I'm going to do is when at the 6, you can easily grab your seam ripper, and once you get one stitch, that's very easy, which is why you change it to the 5. Now just make sure, or the 6 stitch length, because that's easy to pull out. And you just cut each one stitch until you get down, so you're opening up your turn hole. Do you see? Of course, it would have been easier if I could find my seam ripper, but you know, the tools you need sometimes hide. All right. And there we go. So now I'm going to take this over to the ironing board and iron it flat. Okay, you can see it's kind of funky wonky because of the fabric I chose. You're like, wait a minute, and it cuts off the tree, and it's okay. It's all going to be underneath the envelope flap, right? So you won't see the wonkiness because it's underneath there. And I also, so now I've got my turn hole ready to go. I ironed the open seam. So I've got my turn hole. They're nice, strong seams. So when I'm twisting and purling and turning, it's going to be able to handle it. And I've got my top pocket with my nice pretty seam. And so this is where the magic happens. So what you're going to do is you're going to line up your pocket, the 1.25 inches, just keep triple checking that it's well above your turn hole, right? Now you can see my pieces of fabric are much bigger than I need them to, but that's what you're going to want to do. And so you can see I've got my hole above it and it's perfect. So it's never a tutorial unless you remember something that you didn't tell you that you needed. You need pins, friends. Hopefully that didn't mess everybody up, but you need pins. Okay, so you're going to lay your fabrics down like so. Your back fabric, I've got my hole there. I've got my envelope pocket about at least 1.5 inches above the hole. So it's going to be nice and hidden underneath the envelope. It's hidden, but still works. And I've laid it down. Everything's right side up. Now I'm going to take my lily frog and line her up. Now, if I wanted to, if I can't see, which we're getting kind of thick, so I'm not quite sure that helps, but maybe enough. Just enough light so I can see where did I want that fold to be? Or I wanted the flap. That's why the pieces are much bigger than what I really need, because this way I can manipulate it while I'm doing it, which is fantastic. So I can see right here, my envelope fold is right at that sweet spot, right where and that's just where I think that'll be a nice place to have it. It'll be like a 2/3, a little more than half, maybe not 2/3 exactly, but definitely big enough. And everything that Lily is touching is interfaced and good. And I triple check, we are good to go. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take, that's a much bigger pin than I need. These are my favorite pins. They're by Riley Blake. It's nice little glass head pins. I will link them down below. They're one of my favorite things. I think Fat Quarter Shop has like an exclusive colorway, but you don't need that, but they're so great. Nice and skinny. That's the thing I love about the actual pin, is a nice skinny pin. So more pins is better than less pins, because you want to make sure, because at some areas you're going through 3 layers of fabric, right? So you're going to want to go ahead through 3 layers of fabric. Pin everything, not that big fat pin, but yeah, like this is 3 layers. Keeping in mind where I'm going to be sewing is on my pencil line, remember? Okay, so she is all pinned up. You can see pinned up. Everything is good to go. Let's just triple check. It's always better it's like cutting, measuring 3 times before you cut. Just triple check before you sew, because seam ripping is no fun. So everything is good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, right? And I'm going to I'll probably anchor at the bottom just because this is a nice straight line. I find it's better to start with a nice straightaway. It's like you're a race car. Start with a nice straightaway. And then, because when you're going around these curves, you're going to do a nice 2-stitch, nice tight stitch. So the stitches are very close together. So that way you can actually get your nice curves. A nice 2-point stitch will do it. You could always go down to a 1.5 if you wanted to even a tighter. So the stitch length is how often your needle goes down, how close the stitches are together, and you're going to get a nice tight curve as you go. So I'm probably going to use either 1.5 or 2.0 stitch length. Start at this straightaway and just go slowly. You will see. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Let's do it. Sorry for the reflection, friends. Filming this in the bright sun of the day, but Hopefully you can still see everything I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is like I said, I'm going to start right here at my straightaway, put my needle down. I've got a 2.0 stitch length, and it's just slow and steady as we go around sewing on the pencil lines that we drew. Let's do it. Okay, friends, so you can see I sewed all around Miss Lily the Frog on the pencil lines. So what I'm going to do is going to take my pins out. Easy peasy. And then I'm going to rough cut all the pieces first, just to get the bulk out of the way, right? Okay, so that's just to get my bulk out of the way. It gives me some nice scraps. But now what I'm going to do is cut a little closer, probably about an inch, half an inch away from the pencil line. So, you can cut once. I like to cut in stages so that way I don't accidentally get too close. So I did a nice half-inch cut around. And then what we need to do is we need to do some curve maintenance. Now, if you've ever stuffed something that's three-dimensional, non-square, with some shape, you know that turning in these corners gets a little tight, which is why I actually like to grab my pinking shears. It helps to alleviate some of the bulk. If you don't have pinking shears, you can make your own pinking shears, triangles, just, a snip at a time, making it's a little more labor intensive, with your scissors. That wasn't even close enough. So, because we're trying to reduce the bulk in the corners so that when we turn it out, inside out, the corners will push out. It just reduces the bulk in the corners. So, I'm trimming with my pinking shears. And then I'm going to go back and look at where am I going to have a corner problem. I'm going to have a corner problem right there, that's for sure. So that's going to be a corner problem. Same thing right here. There's going to be too much bulk in that corner. It won't be able to turn. So again, each cracker and its shape is going to help you determine how exact you need to be trimming. If you do it all, like down at the bottom, we're good to go. It'll turn. Except around that edge, I will have to go and do some little corner maintenance down at the edge. It's easier to do this the first time than once you turn it inside out. You can turn it back around, but learn from me. Obviously, don't cut anywhere close to your seams, but reduce the bulk around the round edges in the corners. It's easier to do it in the beginning. So just take your time doing that. All right. We'll do a little extra trim here because we can. We had a nice tight number 2 stitch, so everything's going to hold just fine. All right, I think that's pretty good. I gave it quite a haircut. But that's it. Are you ready for the mess? So remember, we've got our hole right here. And we're going to turn her inside out. It is a little tricky. It's a little finicky to start. Don't worry, once you get one piece turned, it all kind of turns itself inside out. But the hardest part is just getting started. And then you just keep pushing and turning and pulling and turning. Just take your time. You got to stick your finger down and push out those corners that we were trying to work on. And that's why we've got our turning tools to get down really in the cracks. But do the bulk of it with your fingers would be my recommendation. So really get your bulk in. And down here in the foot. All right, so let's see. I have, oh, nope, this side. All right. All right, I've got my bulk turned. Now I'm going to take my thicker tool and really just work those corners. Make sure, but being gentle as to not pop a seam, right? That's also why you want to use a nice tight stitch length, is you don't want to pop a seam. So you can just keep going around the edges. And then you got to turn your tool around to go the other way, right? We were doing the up and now we're doing the down. You can tell I got a bulk issue right in this bottom corner, but I'm going to push it out. If that was at the top, I'd probably turn it back inside out and do it again, but it's at the bottom, which is where the cracker is going to sit on its feet and it's going to be fine. All right. All right, let's see. She's so pretty. So now oh, hold on. I can see right here. So you can see how it kind of puckers. It means I haven't pressed out the seam. So hold on, I gotta get in the hole and then twist it and turn it. There we go. So just, look at it and twist it and turn it. Perfect. But I didn't do it on this side too. Right at the arms. Sometimes it's hard to get all the edges. Okay. Now she's good to go. Look at her. Okay. Now you could go give her a press right now. I probably won't. I'm just going to start the stuffing. So I like to use, like I said, I like to use wool roving versus polyfill, but you could use whatever you want. And all you're going to do is stuff it in the hole. It gets a little tricky because it's a tiny little hole. It's underneath the pocket. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it can be done. Just take your time. And it's just like stuffing a pillow. So let's do it. Okay, friends, after I finished stuffing her, making sure to pay attention to all the corners, I gave her a nice steam press so that she's nice and flat. And now she's ready to join her cracker friends. I hope this was helpful and helps take down the scary part of doing the crackers. So welcome to Cracker Mania, friends. Happy stitching.